obey the Lord your God and carefully follow all his commands I give you today, the Lord your God will set you high above the nations on earth. All these blessings will come on you and accompany you if you obey the Lord your God. You will be blessed in the city and blessed in the country. The fruit of your womb will be blessed, the crops of your land and the young of your livestock, the calves of your herds, and the lambs of your flocks. Your basket and your kneading through will be blessed. You will be blessed when you come in and blessed when you go out. The Lord will grant that the enemies who rise up against you will be defeated before you. They will come at you from one direction, but flee from you in seven. The Lord will send a blessing on your barns and on everything you put your hand to. The Lord your God will bless you in the land he is giving you. Let us repeat the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the power and the glory, forever. Amen.
Brent Simonet, Desmond Bannister, Renwood Wells, Jeffrey Lloyd, Dr. Dwayne Fan, Marvin Lane, Frankie Campbell, Lucio D'Aguila, Michael Pinchard, Darren Henfield, Jamal Ferrer, Anisha Rowe, Brennan Rowe, Stuart Johnson, Philip Davis, Vaughn Miller, Keisha Parker Edson, Aaron Lewis, Carlton Boleg, James Aldridge, Travis Robinson, Eugene Gibson, Ronald Saunders, Frederick McAlpine, Hank Johnson, Mark Hume, Michael Pope, Miriam Refuge Emmanuel, Reese Shipman, Ruben Ramming, Ricky Mackey, Shannon Don Cartwright, Janelle Ferguson, Leonard Hannah Martin, Faisal Ford, Chester Cooper.
Good morning, honorable members. Honorable members, we are into the first week of summer, and we've already experienced temperatures in the low 90s. And so we expect this to be a fairly warm summer. We're trusting and praying to God that during this hurricane season, we are spared of the passage of any hurricane within our region. Honorable members, this morning, I want to call on the honorable member, first of all, for Seabreeze, who will bring some remarks on the passing of a sports icon in this country. The chair now recognizes the honorable member for Seabreeze.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, the 21st of June, 2020, the Bahamas, and in particular the sports community, lost one of its sporting giants in the person of Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. He hailed from the Baintown community. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Miller excelled as an elite athlete in the sports of boxing and cycling. As a boxer, he was famous for what is known as his bolo punch, which landed him the heavyweight championship title he held intermittently for 10 years during the 1960s. As a cyclist, Mr. Speaker, he competed locally, regionally, and internationally, placing among top finishers. Notably, he competed in the West Indies Goodwill Championships in 1965 and the World Cycling Championship in 1970. He later served as a coach for students at the government high school and C.C. Sweeting schools, and as a coach on numerous Olympic teams. He was nationally recognized with the induction, or his induction, into the National Sports Hall of Fame in the year of 2003. And this is in recognition of his outstanding accomplishments and service. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Miller will be dearly missed and his contributions forever recorded in the annals of history. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth, Sports and Culture, and certainly by extension the government of the Bahamas, I extend heartfelt condolences to the Miller family and the entire sports community on the passing of our sports hero, Mr. Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. May his soul rest in peace, and all of the dearly departed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair now calls on the Honorable Member for St. Anne's, who will bring remarks on the passing of a former colleague or former parliamentarian, his former colleague and former parliamentarian in this Honorable House. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Anne's.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise this morning with a heavy heart to bear tribute to one Peter Donald Graham, a member of this House of Assembly from 1956 to 1972 for the great constituency of Long Island. Peter, I know Peter as a politician, as of course he was the first cabinet minister for housing and labor under my father's government, which was formed in 1964 with the coming of internal self-government. And many of you today may, if you don't know, may, as you go past, would be Yellow Elder off the Prince Charles Highway. You'll see those circular houses on the north side of the Highway, which was then a two-lane road. It was then developed into a four-lane highway. He was responsible for building those as the Minister of Housing. And then, of course, in 1967, there was Majority Rule Day, and Peter stayed on until 1972, unlike some of his other colleagues who decided not to run again. I've known Peter, well, let me rephrase that. My wife and I have known Peter Graham all of our lives. Peter obviously was, as I mentioned, a political colleague of my father's. He was also a profession of the law, and I wear a tie today which represents the law, and as a member for Cat Island and Yamacraw, as a former chairman of the bar, will recall Peter Graham served as an attorney for some 70 years. I don't think maybe Engelston and I together add up to that at the bar. So no one will ever beat that history. Peter Graham was the consummate lawyer. He was always trying to build consensus in his law firm. He started the firm of Graham Thompson. Many of you might remember Bernard Thompson was the Thompson of Graham Thompson, and they were at one point right here on the corner of Parliament Street and Shirley Street before building the prestigious firm of it is today, which includes persons like Sean McQueenie, Michael Barnett, and the list goes on of persons who have come through the doors of Peter Graham Thompson's firm. I would be remiss to say that Peter is the man, was, at the time of his death, was the man he was for many reasons, but I'll take this opportunity to pay credit and tribute to his wife, Yola. Any of you that knew Peter or knew Yola Graham, she was the woman behind Peter Graham. She was his loving wife, business partner, and made him the success he is today. Yola, unfortunately, predeceased him, and his current widow is left to mourn his passing. Peter was also, up until the time of his death, many of you might not know, he went to work that day. He went home, he was feeling a little tired. He decided to take a rest. While he was at work that day, he was telling his lawyers, some of his lawyers in his firm, he was looking forward to going to his beloved Hog Key in the Long Island, the Hog Key Long Island, as opposed to the other Hog Keys. He was looking forward to flying there tomorrow, the next day. he lay down, and within an hour, he went to meet his Maker. Peter and I, not only professionally, not only in the law, Peter and I spoke to Peter on the 17th of February of this year. We negotiated a sizable transaction of which he represented one side and I obviously represented the other side. We had a great talk. We always talked professionally. He would call me up and ask my advice about certain matters that we both were involved in. Politically, obviously, we talked. Peter, just by way of background, was my parents-in-law's lawyer at their wedding. He was at my wedding. So personally, we've been intertwined for over my entire 65 years on this earth. He was a pilot. He used to fly until recently, flew his own private plane down to Hog Key, where he loved the people of Long Island. Peter Graham, for those of you who do not know, would still, even up until recently, be buying, if I can go into Bahamian vernacular, eyeglass for people and his constituents that he always helped out. He loved his Long Island. Matter of fact, he was down there one day when, of course, Patelco went dead, and that was not working properly, and his mother died here, and I had to fly down to give him the bad news that his mother had passed, and he came up to intern her. He was a philanthropist. He helped many people, despite, I think you saw a letter in the newspaper recently by Ortland Bodie. He helped many people of all walks of life with his help and everything else. He loved nature. He was able to, through his work at Hog Key, bring back the West Indian whistling duck, which now has some 20,000 to 30,000 birds in Hog Key, and it was near extinction there. So we always remember the flamingos, but the West Indian whistling duck, Peter would send down bags and dray loads of feed to feed the ducks in that area, which brought them back. He was indeed a great man. I would just like, Mr. Speaker, to end by taking an analogy, which I think is a very good analogy, because some of us forget the difference in age. I want to go back in history to put it in perspective between, certainly in the case of my father, born in 1898, and Peter Graham, who was born this century. And take a quote from one Jean Depuch, who many of you know was a Queen's Counsel, came to the bar a lot later, as having had a successful career in journalism, but also served in my father's first cabinet as a Minister of Education. So at my father's funeral, Jean wrote these words, which I think are very apt to put into practice a little bit of history. When Roland Theodore Simonet was first elected to the House of Assembly in 1925, I'm quoting Jean Depuch, I was a boy at school. Our paths first crossed in the mid-30s, and that's when he got thrown out of a meeting of the Chamber of Commerce. He tried to report, and my old man told him, you can't be here. And then we came to the election of 1949. Now, at this time, remember, there were no political parties. So I'm just bringing this for some of us who like to rewrite history. We can have a bit of history written by persons of the time. And Eugene goes on to say, talking about my father, to me, he was a personification of the, sorry, I've got my page with me. He was a personification of the stifling establishment that was throttling the country. That's Jean Depuch talking about my father. To him, I was the personification of a sinister force of young man, burnished in the furnaces of modern universities, who were dedicated to a mission of rendering the suffering fabric of the intolerable world in which we were born. On this premise, our battle lines were drawn. In that election year, more than 30 years ago, don't forget this was written in 1980, Roland Simon and I were, by very nature of things, sworn political enemies. Both served in the same cabinet. In 1953, I was appointed the Governor's Executive Council, to which he was elevated in 1949. I joined him and his colleagues, which included Peter Graham, on Executive Council, not without misgivings and a lurking suspicion on both sides. So, after all those years, we buried the hatchet and became good friends and moved on. So you can see that how, when you go back in history, there was It changes, it keeps on changing. I read that, Mr. Speaker, because, and this applies to all of us, Jean went on to say, over the years we took shelter together in the lonely tents of the scorching desert of public life, our only nourishment being our common interest in the future of our beloved country. I think many of us have felt that line. Peter Graham has gone to meet his Maker. He will rest in peace, but in the press he leaves a legacy of philanthropy, of politics, of law, and of being a great father. He leaves behind 2 children, his widow, and a host of friends and family at the bar and other relatives. May God continue to give his family peace and nourishment in God's word at this time, and may he rest in peace.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Introduction. Oh, the Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Romkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wondered whether you were given the opportunity to speak in respect to the 2 persons to whom tribute has been offered this morning. I start with the sports icon, Leonard Boston Blackie, who no doubt was the epitome of someone giving back his whole life. Many of us achieve success. Many of us achieve accolades. Many of us do so on the backs of others without even looking back to see how we could reach back and bring them. Boston Blackie was one of those persons who stayed amongst his people, who never left his people, and who understood what it was to reach out, help, and to bring others along. The classic fights with Boston Blackie and Poet Perry. Poet Perry was the Bahamas champion, and then when that bolo hit him, it became Boston Blackie, and the heavyweight championship of the Bahamas was shared between them off and on for many years. And the 2 of them were good friends, because it's through them that an amateur association in boxing was started, I think, in the early 70s or thereabouts. What is happening right now is still a loss to me. But quite apart from his boxing skills, he was quite the cyclist. And I think his prowess as a cyclist was even more dominating than his boxing skills, because he was a true cyclist. And in fact, I think a story is told that the night he would have lost the championship one night, and then the next morning they fought in the Oakfield Hangar. I don't know if anyone would recall, we used to have our boxing matches at the Oakfield Hangar. That's what you do. And so he lost the championship that night, and the next morning he was on the line for the cycling race, which he won that day too. He won. So he lost that night, won that morning. And so I wish to, and sadly, I think his wife passed just for a year ago. I think he's just gone home to join her. So to the boxing community, cycling community, and those of us who knew and loved Boston Blackie, we extend our condolences to him. I'll be remiss if I do not speak to also to the life and times of Mr. Peter Graham, a gentleman and a scholar, someone who understood what civility meant, someone who appreciated how times evolved and how he embraced the changes of time. Did not pay lip service to it. He was one amongst those who did not yearn for the good old days anymore,
He understood that the good old days had long passed them, and he embraced the new world and the new days that was put before him. And he did not pay lip service to that. I could attest to that. I could attest to that as an officer in the Bahamas Bar Association, the advice he gave and the support he gave whilst I was an officer, vice president, and then president of the Bar Association. I could have called and leaned on him for advice. And one thing about him, when he left public life, he left public life. He did not get engaged. He left it completely. And I can say he was a firm believer in democracy. He had a wonderful relationship with Sir Lyndon Finley. And very often, Sir Lyndon would remark that they spoke about things of national affairs, but he did not get in the public domain of it. I know personally of the relationship he had with the former leader, the Honorable Terry Gladstone Christie. They had a wonderful relationship, and they communed together. And when I say he did not pay lip service to the evolving changes of this society, as many still do today, and as many still yearn for the good old days, he did not pay lip service to it because Graham Thompson, Bernard Thompson, was known as what they call a white law firm. But he was one of the first to integrate that firm in a meaningful way, not just by having a face there, having their faces there, but ensuring that black lawyers could come in this firm and become a meaningful partner, both equity and in profit wise. And so he did not pay lip service to it. And I think his life is one that we can all hold up to understand some things about, first of all, public rights, when that is done, what is to happen, and to understand that when change comes, we embrace it. And yes, as was pointed out, politics and politicians sometimes do make strange bedfellows. But they do. It does happen. And Peter Graham, the Speaker and members, he was, as I said, a gentleman par excellence, someone who understood this society, became a part of this society in its full context, and appreciated that, yes, I can say this, that black lives do matter. He understood that. He did not pay lip service to it. He acted it and did it through how he incorporated black lawyers in his firm, how he reached out to all of us, keep us on the straight and narrow, and to give advice to uplift the well-being of us all. I wish to extend my condolences to his family, his wife Viola, and to the family of Graham Thompson and co, the law firm, and to say that he would be sorely missed, and the Bahamas would have lost a gentleman and his cause.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Introduction and swearing in of new members. Laying of documents by ministers. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Kalani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following. Emergency Powers, COVID-19, number 4, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents by ministers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 4, Amendment Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 4, Amendment number 2, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 5, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 Lockdown number 9, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 Lockdown number 10, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 Bimini Lockdown Amendment number 2, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Amendment number 6, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Currencies, Notes and Coins Amendment Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Automatic Exchange of Financial Account Information Amendment Regulation 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Amendment Act 2020, Appointed Day Notice 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Financial Intelligence Unit financial statements for the period July 1, 2018 to December 31st, 2018, and the independent auditor's report.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Directions 2020, Bahamas Registered Stock number 3, 2023, 2025, 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2050.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Mount Moriah.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House. Oh, sorry, you want one done? Okay. Yeah.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House the Bahamas Registered Stock Directions 2020, Bahamas Registered Stock number 4, 2023, 2025, 2027, 2030, 2040, and 2050.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
Please you, Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the Bahamas Electricity Corporation Amendment Regulations 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg leave to lay on the table of the House a copy of the following: the Road Traffic Issues of Identification Plates Fees number 2, Order 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Mount Moriah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of the House the Royal Bahamas Police Force Commissioners Policing Plan 2020.
Order that the document be brought up. Order that the document do lie on the table. Further laying of documents. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Bamboo Town.
Mr. Speaker, there are no further laying of documents. We can proceed with the House agenda.
Statements and communications by ministers.
None, Mr. Speaker.
Communications by the clerk. Messages from the Governor General. Messages from the Senate. Motions for leave of absence, leave to resign seat, and new writs. Presentation of petitions. Presentation of reports of committees. Adoption of reports of committees. First reading of bills. Second reading and committal of bills. Committee of the whole House. Third reading and passing of bills. Consideration of Senate amendments. Resolutions. Members' statements. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Angliston.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I just really want to use this juncture in the agenda to inquire of the government. It is being said, and I think if it's not true, that the words that it should be addressed immediately, that the government intends to send home / terminate approximately 1,000 persons, including people who are on contract in the Department of Social Services. And I'm wondering if it is not the case, whether the government can now thwart that I guess, that story that is being circulated and causing great concern in this country. Yes, thank you.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
No, 1,000 in general.
The chair recognizes the honorable member.
I'll let him speak to the general.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, as the member spoke about social service, I would yield and allow the member responsible and allow the member for social service.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Angliston and I have that kind of relationship where I believe she could have asked me, but I figure she wants it on the record. So for the record, Mr. Speaker, as the minister responsible for social services, I'm not aware of any such decisions. I've not been a part of any such discussions.
It ain't gonna happen.
It ain't gonna happen as per my instruction.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for Carmichael.
If I may take this occasion to say to colleagues, members from representing constituencies in New Providence, that I'd really be grateful if they would respond to my correspondence by tomorrow when we meet here, so that we can move ahead with the matters that they are aware of. I'd be grateful for those who haven't responded to respond, to provide it, and they can provide directly to me by tomorrow.
Thank you, honorable member. Chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to very quickly say condolences to the Poitier family of Mary McKinsey. Of course, once again, the Grant family, number of families that are grieving throughout the Bahamas, but certainly in Grand Bahama as well. Mr. Speaker, I also wanted to bring to constituents' attention that commencing this week and for the next 3 months, every week, the Marco City team will be providing hot meals as well as lunch on the weekends, and we'll do so on all 5 of the parks that are in Marco City. And hopefully by the 3rd month, with the help of the Minister of Works, we will have some additional parks that we will also extend our program to. But so beginning this week, those persons who wish to volunteer to work with us, we welcome you to join us. That will not stop the food distribution program that's going on, but we have had requests for meals on the weekend, and so we'll be working on that. And then I also want to say to the person who meant it as a mischievous act, who sent many persons from 5 constituencies to call me and publish my number for assistance. Thank you very much for doing so. And we encourage people, please continue to call where we can help. We will, and all of my colleagues are willing to help as well, and so we'll share that burden. We stand with you, and we ask you to please just keep the faith.
Thank you, honorable member. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Yamakro.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for your kind indulgence. 3 short points, Mr. Speaker. I would like to first commend the Minister for Youth and Sport for recognizing the late Mr. Leonard Boston Blackie Miller, who is a gentleman who is near and dear to me on behalf of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I, like the Prime Minister's brother, donned the glove at some point. And as a young man, my father saw some defect, and the road led to Mr. Leonard Boston Blackie Miller in the evening, where, you know, as the leader for Her Majesty's loyal opposition, Cat Island Rumkey in San Salvador, quite correctly stated that he gave his all in service to his country. Sometimes we did not recommend it, but thousands of young persons beat the worn path to go to Mr. Miller in the evening. And it also recognizes the contributions of many teachers who over the years give of their time in the evening to assist the poor and indigent. And so I would like to commend the Leader of the Opposition and the Minister for Youth, Sports and Community Affairs, who spoke on behalf of the government, for recognizing a man, a true hero of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, in Mr. Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. I would also like, as past president of the bar, to give condolences to Mr. Peter Graham and his family. I did not know him personally, like Sanan, Andor, Cat Island, Rumkins, and Salvador. But as president, in circumstances where persons didn't think that the sufficient, that you weren't, there was no right for a young man such as myself to be president, to see a firm such as Graham, Thompson, and Co. always paying their dues, always coming out, always supporting efforts in the bar. And so I'd like just to commend this firm for continuing in the rich tradition, and to also extend condolences to the family. I took the opportunity to stand today, Mr. Speaker, to highlight something that's a difficulty for me in my community. About 2 weeks ago, a young girl was shot in New Providence. She lost her life. And horrifically, a 2-year-old young girl was shot in Eleuthera. And I know sometimes, I want to say, and I know that everybody here shares that when somebody that young is injured in a senseless act of violence, and I'm going to be very careful in what I say, because I know this matter will go to the court. But I want to let the family know that I'm praying, I'm quite certain that the Prime Minister of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas is praying, and sometimes they don't always get the kudos that they deserve. But I want to commend the members of the Royal Bahamas Police Force for doing the work that they've done in this matter. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to give thanks in the first instance to the Reach Out Youth Ministry and its organizer, Dudley Sade, for the tremendous outpouring of love to the East Grand Bahama constituency through the distribution of groceries and through a hot meal. I want to thank those who partnered with Reach Out Youth Ministry, the Thompson's Foundation, the Rotary Club of Grand Bahama, and the Vessels of Purposes Elite Youth Girls Group, who were responsible for delivering the hot breakfast to those houses door to door that they delivered groceries to. And I want to thank them for allowing me, as the Member of Parliament, to accompany them and to be a part of that program. Mr. Sade continues to do a tremendous job in Grand Bahama, and Reach Out Youth Ministries continues to do a tremendous job in Grand Bahama throughout the island in providing assistance to those who are most vulnerable and who may not have access. And I can't say enough about that effort and what it means to those who depend upon organizations like his and others to carry them through this very difficult time. And so I just want to recognize them and their work. Likewise, I would like to congratulate the incoming officers of the Rotary Clubs in Grand Bahama. You'll notice that I'm wearing a mask this morning that is Rotary. And this was made by one of the Rotarians, the Rotary Club of Lucaya, my club. And I want to congratulate them for their new incoming president, Minna Winters, as well as their assistant district governor, Billie Jean Ferguson. You may know that the Rotary Clubs have been doing a fantastic job in Grand Bahama in providing materials as well as other assistance in terms of boat engine repairs and boat repairs and all kind of things to help get the island of Grand Bahama and Abaco back into some form of normalcy. And so I just want to recognize them. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, I would like to express condolences to my family, and particularly my aunts and uncles, on the passing of my aunt, Ida Turnquest in Long Island yesterday. And Ida was one of those humble souls, very quiet, pretty brown-skinned gal from Long Island. And I remember her so fondly because, as some may know, my early years was in Long Island, and she and my Aunt Cora would have been two of my aunts that I would have known the best, having been there.
Members.
And again, very humble spirit, warm smile, and just a beautiful woman. And so I want to certainly express condolences to her, her family, her children, as well as to the extended family. She's the fourth now of that generation to have passed. And they are approaching that golden ripe age. And so we certainly want to pray for them, pray for the family during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Mount Moriah.
Mr. Speaker, I joined with my colleagues as well to express condolences on behalf of me and my family and the Yellow Elder community on the passing of Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. Mr. Speaker, I had the opportunity to visit with some of his family members on Friday past to express my condolences, and certainly the condolences of the community of Yellow Elder, to which Mr. Miller had a profound connection. I can recall, Mr. Speaker, during the early 1980s, I at that time was a I was an athlete at the government high school and participated in the inter-school sports. And Mr. Boston Blackie Miller was one of the coaches on our team. And I reflected back, Mr. Speaker, on those days because I recall him as being a no-nonsense disciplinarian, but one who, despite that, who demonstrated love and commitment to all of those around him and all of the things he involved himself with. Mr. Boston Blackie Miller never played from behind. If he committed himself to something, he was always in the forefront. God bless him, Mr. Speaker. God bless his family members. God bless the community of Yellow Elder. God bless all of those groups and organizations to which he played a very integral part. And God bless this nation for individuals like Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. And finally, Mr. Speaker, as I take my seat, I would also like to express on behalf of my family and the residents of the constituency of Mount Moriah condolences to all of those families who are suffering a loss at this time. We had an opportunity to visit with many of them. Our prayers go out to them, and we pray that the good Lord will continue to guide them and strengthen them as they go through this period of bereavement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Garden Hills.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to congratulate the thousands of public officers who returned to work today. I would especially congratulate those public officers who continue to work in the front lines, who continue to assist all of us during this COVID pandemic. I just thought, Mr. Speaker, that it's appropriate to know that thousands of ordinary Bahamians will show up to work today and I want to congratulate them because they did a stellar job while they were home. And those who played on the front line continue to do a great work. Mr. Speaker, I also want to extend condolences to the family of Leonard Boston Blackie. I had an opportunity to work with Boston for many, many years. And I agree with everything that was said about him. But I knew him personally. He was fearless. He did his work. He worked for young Bahamians, the students in the school. And I can remember on two separate occasions, Mr. Speaker, where Boston Blackie took it upon himself to make sure every single athlete from CC Streeting was fit. He made sure that athletes who got injured or who felt bad during the track event, he made sure he revived them. He had a tent, and he put these athletes under the tent, and he told every single person that in 10 minutes they'll be back on the track. No wonder, Mr. Speaker, all students love Boston. But Boston, like everyone said, was a two-sport individual. But Boston had a third sport that only those who worked in the teaching profession knew. That sport was to make sure to lead every single demonstration that teachers had. And Boston would go to the forefront because we knew no police would touch him. And at one point, I remember just on Bay Street, he said to the group, "Put me out front so that when Mr. Pinland sees me, he'll just turn back." That was Boston. And so I want to commend and salute him for all he did for all of us in this country and the thousands of students that he made whole, that he rubbed them down to make sure that they were ready to get back on the track and to work for their school. I say to his family, thank you for allowing Boston to be with us.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Tall Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish to also briefly, very briefly, give up my condolences to my family and Tall Pines' condolences to Boston Blackie Miller. I always thought that he lived in Tall Pines because his daughter lives in Tall Pines in Jubilee Gardens, and I met him several times while visiting the house. So when I learned that he is actually from Yellow Elder, it was a surprise to me. But I wanted to publicly give Tall Pines' condolences to Mr. Miller, his contribution. I visited his family, his daughter, last week also to give our condolences, and I wish to publicly thank him for his service to this country as a boxer, as a cycler, and as a gentleman in sports, and as the member for Garden Hill said, in education. Speaker, I also wish to give my personal condolences and my family and Tall Pines to the nation, to Mr. Peter Graham. I am one of the products of what he has done as an attorney. I fortunately had the opportunity to work at Graham Thompson for almost 5 years. And his office actually was right next to mine. And I was surprised many mornings that he was actually the first person to come into Graham Thompson in the morning. And I always wondered why someone of his stature in law and in politics would still be coming to the office at 7, sometimes 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. And we would meet him there, and I would often meet him there, Mr. Speaker. And I had the opportunity to sit in his office, and I always, the member for finance, spoke about the duck. His office is pictured all around his office. There are pictures of these ducks, and we often spoke about his time at Hog Key and his time even here in Parliament. And so that experience as an attorney working with him, and I'm sure many other attorneys would have come through the doors of Graham Thompson, and even in these chambers and in the Senate, Mr. Speaker. And so his contribution to us as attorneys and to us as politicians would not go unknown. And And we cherish and value his contribution as an attorney, as a Bahamian scholar, and as a member of parliament in these humble chambers. Speaker, I give my condolences to his family and to my Graham Thompson family. I wish to let them know that we are praying with them, and we would all miss Mr. Graham. He was a wonderful young man. Sorry, he was a wonderful senior. He was young once, but he was a wonderful senior. And if you see him and you saw him walk, you would never imagine how old he was, Mr. Speaker. But he was a wonderful man. Speaker, I also wish to say to the people of Tall Pines that our constituency office will be reopened next week. We would be taking appointments for starters, and then we would gradually open fully as we did. So our homework center, our computer lab, and my office will be open starting next week. You can call in for appointments only at 601-5438. And we look forward to having our town hall meeting, our Zoom town hall meeting. The member for Southern Shores has indicated that he is prepared to have someone from his office talk to us about what his department, what his ministry is doing in terms of assisting after the COVID-19 pandemic. So we would be announcing the time and date for that Zoom or virtual town hall meeting in the coming days. So 601-5438, Tower Pines office will reopen. Again, my condolences to Mr. Miller and to Mr. Grant. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Centerville.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Centerville also wants to offer condolences to Boston Blackie as well as to Mr. Peter Graham. But I stood today, Mr. Speaker, to just shed some light on the issue of mental health and mental illness. And having said that, I'd like to encourage our young people, in particular the young people of Centerville and of course the Bahamas, to understand how important it is to communicate and share and talk about your challenges. A lot of them, Mr. Speaker, are challenged with their school life, their social life. And we have an obligation, we as parents, as leaders, to understand that we must stop sometimes and speak to them. Say hello, good afternoon, good morning, no matter who they are, where they are, what color they are. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the Minister of National Security to also speak to his team, the officers, and how to communicate in this COVID environment with our young people. They are challenged. So sometimes there are laws, and we know that there are laws. They have to follow the laws, their policies and rules. But they are going through a very difficult time. Mr. Speaker, with the scarcity of food, challenges at home, we want to ensure that even our parents are encouraged. Our parents need assistance. They need to be communicated with and communicated effectively in order to share what they can with their children. And so having said that, I just wanted to highlight this issue of mental health, which none of us is immune to, and the issue of mental illness, and encourage us all to share as much as we can to encourage and uplift our young people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. Good morning, Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, for the past several months, we have backbenchers and family MPs have not been able to inform the House of several items that have taken place in our various constituencies. And I would like to take this opportunity, if I'm allowed to inform the House of several items that I have on my agenda here. First of all, I'd like to offer to the family in Hatch Bay on the shooting of that little girl. First of all, my apologies because it happened to my constituency. And of course, we pray that God will continue to help her in her struggles. Mr. Speaker, but I cannot forget the medical team, Dr. Cho, his team. What a wonderful team, Mr. Speaker. I think because of the swift movement and because of the qualifications and because of who they are, today the little girl is resting in ICU. She's recovering, and because it started in my constituency first. That team needs to be commended. I did not forget the medical team here in New Providence, Mr. Prime Minister. The medical team here in New Providence activated the aircraft to Eleuthera in a matter of minutes. I was very pleased with that. The family offers to you and the medical team and to the government their appreciation and thanks. Today she's alive, struggling for her life because of the swift movement of our government. But I dare say, Mr. Minister of National Security, Lutherans are proud of the swift movement of your team in Eleuthera. Today we've seen the Royal Bahamas Police Force in full action, fully dressed, fully prepared in the island of Eleuthera in a matter of hours, and apprehending a person in their custody for a crime that took place in the constituency. And of course, late yesterday afternoon, my arrival in New Providence at the policy dock to see your team. Never in the history of in the Bahamas of a young man to see law enforcement in action as such. They need to be commended for what a great job they're doing. That's it yesterday. Mr. Speaker, I also would like to point out we have some mailboat operators in this country that has given freely to this country and to the lives and rescues in the last couple of years. I want to thank Mr. Tom Hanna for going down in southeastern the Bahamas during Hurricane Matthew, rescuing those individuals and bringing them back to New Providence and having them here safety here in New Providence. Mr. Speaker, I dare not forget Quincy. The Bahamas Debris has helped tremendously during the time of the Dorian team that took us all the way into Abaco at just the cost of fuel alone, Mr. Speaker. And we were able, excuse me? Yes, and also, yes. And, these gentlemen are giving up and giving back to this country. They need to be commended. I want to thank them for the services. I also I forgot to mention in my last statement here in this honorable house about a team in Eleuthera called a team that worked for the past 3 months, every day providing hot meals in the central Eleuthera area. Mr. David Bollinky is a foreigner. He's an investor who owns Tippies and one of our own locals, Elliot Rule. He's a member of that team. And the team at Tippies took 3 months and prepared a hot meal every day and distributed through central Eleuthera. I want to thank them for that. Mr. Speaker, I dare not forget, and I would like for the minister, if he will, to speak to the what we call the 52-week workers, because we know that this is basically will be coming to a head, and the questions are being asked every day, Mr. Minister. What are the plans for the 52-week workers throughout the country? And, Madam Eggleston, yes, he did, but there are a lot of Bahamians who are working who just didn't have the answers until asking the questions, so it wouldn't hurt for the good minister to be able to explain to them exactly what's happening with the program. And that is why I'm asking that question. I'd like to say to the Minister of National Security, sir, if you may, to have a program in the island of Eleuthera where some of our young people will have an opportunity to join the forces. If we can put something in place, quite a bit of young people are there who would like to have an opportunity to be civil servants of this country. I'd like you to, if you can do that. And to my government, I want to thank you for all the support you've given me. The people of Central and Eleuthera, I want to thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my condolences to Ms. Eloise Wilson, who lives on Palmetto Street in the constituency of St. Barnabas. I would have seen her family yesterday, and my prayers are with the family. I also would like to give condolences to Mr. Miller, Boston Blackie. Some years ago, when I was involved in track and field for St. Augustine's College. I had the occasion to meet Mr. Boston Blackie, and as other members would have shared, you couldn't miss him. You knew that he was around, and he commanded the respect and most importantly the love that he had from the students around him. Also, Mr. Speaker, some 15 years ago, like the Member of Parliament for Tall Pines, maybe not at the same time, I was a law student through the University of London's external program. And at that time, I was an employee at Graham Thompson and Co. For a number of years, where I got the opportunity to learn from a lot of the great legal minds there at Graham Thompson, including Mr. Graham. And so I, too, would like to give condolences to his family and the entire Graham Thompson family, of which I was a member, like the member for Tall Pines. And finally, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow is a very important day for me. Tomorrow I will be a proud father, and I hope my daughters are listening. Proud father, my 18, well, soon to be 18-year-old twin daughters, Sharon and Sinead, who I will not let date until they're 40. Good luck with that, right, Mr. Speaker? They will be graduating from my alma mater, South Beach's alma mater, and of course, the member for Kalani and the member for Port Charlotte, that great institution called St. Augustine's College, tomorrow. So I want to congratulate them and to let them know that I am very proud, and I will be there tomorrow in the virtual graduation. And I will say, not in the government car, I'm coming in my own car, right, to have the balloons and take them and, so that we can celebrate. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Fox Hill.
Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my condolences to the family of Leonard Boston Blackie. Leonard Boston Blackie, I knew before I knew who he was. I was a little girl in Foxville growing up on Adderley Street. And on a Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon, the cyclists would come from town. I think they call it a round the island race. And the path took them along the Eastern Road. If you know Adderley Street, it's close to Bernard Road by St. Augustine. So all of us little children there, we would run from Bernard Road over the hill of Johnson Road and down to the Eastern Road to watch Boston Blackie and all the cyclists pass. And every child in Fox Hill hero was Boston Blackie. They would go around Yamacraw. At that time, I don't think there was a Prince Charles or Joe Farrington, so they had to come back to Bernard Road. So by the time they had ridden around there, we were back, running back from the Eastern Road, over Johnson Road Hill again, holding your side, breathing hard, and you would be on a corner of Adderley Street and St. Augustine's College to watch Boston lead the pack pass, and all of us cheering for Boston Blackie. That's my first memory of Boston Blackie. I came upon him again at the Commonwealth Games, and the member for Garden Hills reminded me that Boston Blackie was also a masseuse. And before I jumped, I remember Boston Blackie taking all of the knots out of my muscles and just, rubbing away and making sure that we were all ready to compete. Boston Blackie was a hero to us. In Foxville, there was another boxer, he's still alive, his name is Quincy Thrill-A-Minute Pratt. And he gives a lot of his success, he lays it at the foot of Leonard Boston Blackie. Boston Blackie was a hero to us. He was our hero. He was a Bahamian patriot. He was an avid and an elite sportsman. This country is better off that Boston Blackie was here. I will miss him, and I am proud to say, before he died, he got to smell some of the roses. There was a school in the South called Anatole Rogers High School. The school has 4 houses. One house is named for Wenty Ford of baseball fame. Another house is named for another Bahamian patriot, the Durwood Knowles, that's Knowles House. A third house is named for Chanel Ferguson, that's Ferguson House. And the fourth house It's named for Leonard Boston Blackie, that's Miller House. So farewell, Boston. Farewell, you did well. We will miss you. God bless your family, and God bless us for having had you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Long Island.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give condolences to the family of Ms. Emma Wells. She is the mother of the late Tennyson Wells, and also the mother of Mrs. Iris Tinder, my former teacher, Ms. Rosina Hyfram, two great supporters of mine in Long Island, and also the mother of Richard and Charlie Wells. So I want to extend sincere condolences on behalf of myself, my family, and the people of Long Island to that family. I will be joining them this weekend as they funeralize Ms. Wells. Mr. Speaker, I'd also like to give condolences to the family of Ms. Ida Tanquet, who passed this weekend. To her children, I offer my sincere condolences. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to give condolences to the family of Mr. Peter Graham. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Graham and to cultivate a relationship with him. And during those conversations, he enlightened me about his time as a Member of Parliament for Long Island, where he served as the MP for some 2 decades. So to his children, I want to extend my condolences to his family. He, Mr. Graham, told me when we met the first time, he said, life has come full circle. He said, your grandfather was my general, and now you are the Member of Parliament. So I want to thank his family for loaning him to us, for all the years of service that he gave to the people of Long Island, in law, in real estate, and broadly to the Bahamas. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Angleston.
Speaker, I was asking a question, but I omitted to send condolences to a former colleague of ours in this Parliament, Hope Strawn, whose mother died about 3 days ago. And, you know, when we talk about Hope Strawn, we always say she's the daughter of Mary Ingram, the original suffragette, but she's also the daughter of Maxine Adley, who was this amazing woman. What was the root? She was of Cat Island or Long Island? Long Island descent, who was such a converted advocate to the historic struggle of the Bahamian people leading up to majority rule. And as Hope said to me yesterday, remain faithful to this organization, Progressive Liberal Party, because of her commitment to the ideals of the organization, and she never wavered in it because she understood it fully. So I'd like to send condolences to Hope Strawn and her entire family. She has a sister who works at the Ministry of Tourism, Erica Ingram, and other McFall, who's at the Bethel Baptist. She raised just amazing children, one son and a group of daughters, young women who've done extremely well. And just before I said, I also want to send condolences to the family of Leonard Boston Blackie Miller. I also represented him politically, became very close with that family, and I heard the member for St. Anne speak about Peter Graham, about Eugene DePuch, about his own father, and the thing that resonates is that, and it's something that I ponder on quite a bit in this House, Mr. Speaker, that in that era, these men were extraordinary. I mean, you listen to the eloquence of Eugene DePuch, it's world-class eloquence. And you look at the learnedness, the erudite presence of these men, even of a Boston Blackie, to inspire young people. I mean, totally different races, different backgrounds, different origins, but just amazing in their manifestations in our national life. And the thing that I think the member for Cat Island touched on this, he talked about the civility that they had. My father also served in this house. He sat on opposite sides, a member for St. Anne's. But they respected each other, and I think they loved each other in a collegiate way. All of them, they did. And I think, Mr. Speaker, it's something for us to ponder upon, because I do believe to some extent politics has degenerated. We hear the personal attacks and the negative dialogue, and the elevated debate seems to be dying or missing. And so, Speaker, I would like to see, hopefully, that we can recover that, because when I hear and I learn and I know of the relationships of avid political opponents of the highest order, totally two different poles, but the common ground as statesmen and as nation builders and as patriots that they found is just an amazing thing. And that's our legacy in this parliament. And I think we have to do all that we can to seek to recover that. I'll try to do my best. Yes. But Speaker, only if everybody else promised to do their best too. Thank you, Speaker.
Chair recognizes the honourable member for Mangrove Key, South and Central Andros.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, joining with the chorus of my other colleagues, I too would like to first commence by commending the graduates of the class of 2020 of the South Andros High School, my alma mater, where I attended the graduation exercises on Thursday past. Also in the audience was the good and junior member for Bain and Grandstown, the Honorable Travis Robinson.
Yeah.
It was good to have a young colleague there also in South Andros. What a great celebration to be there in community on Friday. We also had the graduation in Mangrove Key. I was unable to get back because of the bad weather. I had a very poor experience going down into Fresh Creek on the boat and going over by the rain, because I know he's watching right now, but you know, God is a good God. And so I didn't catch much fish on that boat at all, because and then the boat took a dive on one side, I laned to the other side, and I'm not a big, I'll stay on the rock fishing and all day. I ain't no big boatman like that, but we was able to kind of make it through the weekend. On Saturday, though, we were able to attend Saturday the funeral of Miss Anna Nemo, the mother of Frankie, Ducky, and Charlie Doe's up in Barron Point. Joined with Bishop Raymond Mackey and that community in a homegoing at St. Bartholomew's Anglican Church on top of the hill in Barron Point. And we want to say to the family, we extend our condolences. But also, politically, I must also note the fact that Miss Adeline Wilson, also of Bowen Sound, would be interred on the 11th of July. One who would have been an avid supporter of mine, a confidant, an advisor, 92 years old, served at the Anglican Church for many years. And the Lord Bishop would be there in Central Andros for that funeral on the 11th of July. On the 18th, also, we returned to Bowen Sound for the funeral of Miss Sandra Johnson, Lavanda Doe's mother, also in the community of Bowen Sound. On this Saturday, though, I'll be in Mangrove Key, also to say farewell to another set of my supporters, and joining Brother Garnet Bullard there for the funeral of Mrs. Catch on what we call the Banana Patch in the heart of beautiful Mangrove Key. So, Mr. Speaker, in the midst of life is death. But I couldn't allow my leader and others to talk about Leonard Boston Blackie Miller, and that sit there as a proud Androsian son, and not speak about the fact that Leonard Boston Blackie Miller hailed from Kemps Bay, where all of my progenitors and others would have come out of the loins of the community of Kemps Bay. That is special to me. So I was, the deep thought, I was trying to sit there and be myself, but I couldn't. Too many persons were talking about Boston. Let me tell you a little something about Boston. In 1977, 78, we were getting the high school back in South Andros. And so Lyndon and others would have been down there for the independence celebration. It was the first time I actually saw those kind of what we call racing bikes. And Boston brought all of the boys down with him. And they rode from, I guess, virtually from the Governance Complex to Miles Bay and were coming back down. And there we were. My uncle David Roll had the truck. And we heard that they had quite a number of the fellas fell down on the road. The road was recently what we call tar. And my good friend for Carmichael was simply saying recently surfaced or repaired or renovated or remediated or asphalt, whatever they call it. We call it tar in the family. I don't realize, but we call it tar. The government just really tarred the road. And so that's where I'm at. So the fact of the matter, the fellas fell down. And when I came to Nassau after I finished college in school in South Andros, I came to entered the associate degree program. here at COB. I got one of those same bikes because I saw Boston Blackie had one of those same kind of bikes. It was an island, everybody all we had the regular island kind of bicycle. But I wanted a racing bike, is what I saw Boston Blackie had as a proud son of South Andros. So Boston had a real impact on me. And on top of that, he was a part of that boxing climb, and he came home, we had a champ. The same way Elisha Obey did for Auckland, we had a champ in Boston. Ernie Bardi and Josie and Tiger, Baby Boy Roll, they made us feel proud. When Boston came home, we had a champ when he came to South Andros. So I joined with Arlington Miller and the Miller clan, Eggy and Victor and all those back in Kemps Bay. Charles Miller, my good friend who's also in charge of the Adventist Church in Kemps Bay. An entire Miller clan of South Andros. This is a sad moment for us. We lost him. I should be in South Andros tomorrow morning, although the House reconvenes tomorrow afternoon. I should be there tomorrow morning for very few hours tomorrow morning to about some other matters on the ground when it comes to the development prospect for that community. South Andros is dear to me. It's personal. It's personal. And I want to see that community move. It must move. We have been languishing long enough. And I stand, whenever I stand, the people of South, Central, and Manukau, and just know I stand for them. So today, I want you to know today, with all of the unction that left in me to function, my heart is for the people of South, Central, and Manukau, Andros. Today, all those who have gone on, there are many families to come, will be saddening days to come, pardon me. May their souls rest, so it will be. But most importantly, at the end of it all, we look forward to that day when we and Deacon Lloyd and others will join them around the realm of glory. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, there being no further member statement, I just want to also join in expressing condolences to the family of Leonard Boston Blackie. I happen to have grown up on Meeting Street. That used to be the St. Agnes constituency, now a part of Baines and Grantstown. And there was a boxing club on West Street as you move towards the Prairie Grounds. And so I got to know Boston as well as a boxer and a cyclist. But I saw recently a photograph of Boston sitting with an Iceman George Gervin pose holding a basketball. I never knew him to be a basketball player, but what I know from that photograph was that Boston was a real cool dude. And he was sitting, taking a pose similar to the pose of George Gervin, the Iceman, in basketball. He wasn't sitting on a block of ice like the Iceman, but he was cool nevertheless. So the Bahamas has really lost an icon who the people in that community in particular really loved and looked up to. I want to take this opportunity to thank persons in the Nassau Village constituency who have been really working hard with us in food distribution. In particular, I want to thank Bishop Rule, Pastor Duncombe, all of the other pastors in the 14 churches of the Nassau Village constituency. I want to thank Grey Cliff that came in and made some food distribution. I want to thank the Urban Renewal Center for the yeoman work that they're doing in the constituency. And we look forward to the continued distribution of food and other items within the constituency. Someone just last week asked me, as the Member of Parliament for Nassau Village, if we found oil in Nassau Village. And it seems as if we have about a half dozen candidates moving about in Nassau Village. All of a sudden. And I indicated to them, well, that, you know, when something and transformation is taking place, you always have people who want to join the bandwagon. And so we look forward to the activities and the challenges that that would bring. And finally, just want to say that we've launched in Nassau Village a quick money initiative. A quick money initiative. And now, the Bible tells us if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. And so we have launched a program where we give food certificates to those persons who are unable to work and the senior citizens in the community. But those who are able and capable of working, we have a $25 job, a $50 job, a $75 job, and a $100 job. So we are not giving you any money. You're going to work for the money. And yes, I said it. If you don't work, you shouldn't eat. And with that, we'll move on. Appointment of select committees. Instructions to select committee. Discharge of select committees. Notices for future meeting. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Kalani.
Mr. Speaker, before I give my notice, since we were talking about Boston Blackie, I just want to extend condolences to the family of Boston Blackie. Speaker, Boston was a personal friend of my family, of my father, and I would always remember Boston tried to encourage many of us to go into boxing and become boxing champions or whatever. And I myself, I and my brother went into that arena, and I would remember my very first fight. I was ahead on the card, I was told, and doing very well, pulverizing and beating my opponent. However, he got a lucky blow to my head, which resulted in the first time in my life I saw and realized what a star looked like. I saw stars, Mr. Speaker. I became, as the Bahamians would say, giddy, very unstable and disoriented, and I didn't have to wait for anybody to say that is enough. I just said I quit. I quit. And Mr. Speaker, that was the end of my career. My brother, boxer, continued, and he eventually became the heavyweight champion in Germany. In fact, he was the German heavyweight champion. But that's how our boxing, at least my boxing career, ended. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go on again, I just want to inform the public there's some misunderstanding going around on social media with respect to the wearing of facial masks in vehicles or cars. No, you do not have to wear facial masks in cars, especially if you are with your family or yourself. However, if you're giving a stranger a ride, then it's recommended, because you don't know the environment that that individual came from or was exposed to. It's recommended that in those situations you should, to protect yourself and others. But, Mr. Speaker, I rise to give notice that at the next sitting, I intend to move the following resolution. Whereas, pursuant to Article 29(1) of the Constitution, the Governor General made a proclamation of emergency. Hereinafter, the proclamation, dated the 17th day of March 2020, declaring that a state of public emergency exists in the Bahamas. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(4) of the Constitution, the proclamation ceases to be in force at the expiration of a period of 14 days, beginning on the date on which it was made, or such longer period as may be approved under paragraph 5 of Article 29 of the Constitution. And whereas Article 29(5) of the Constitution provides for the continuance in force of a proclamation if at any time while the proclamation is in force, a resolution is passed by each House of Parliament approving its continuance in force for a further period not exceeding 6 months, beginning on the date on which it would otherwise expire, the proclamation shall, if not sooner revoked, continue in force for that further period. And whereas, pursuant in Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a resolution hereinafter, the first resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 30th day of March 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the proclamation for a further period of 8 days until the 8th day of April 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a resolution hereinafter, the second resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 6th day of April 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the proclamation for a further period of 22 days until the 30th day of April 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a resolution hereinafter, the third resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 27th day of April 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the proclamation for a further period of 30 days until the 30th day of May 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Article 29(5) of the Constitution, a resolution hereinafter, the fourth resolution, was passed by each House of Parliament on the 27th day of May 2020, which approved the continuance in force of the proclamation for a further period of 30 days until the 29th day of June 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 3(1) of the Emergency Powers Act, Chapter 34, hereinafter the Act, the Governor General made the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020 on the 17th day of March 2020. And whereas Section 3(3) of the Act provides that emergency regulations may empower such authorities or persons as may be specified in the regulations to make orders and rules for any of the purposes for which such regulations are authorized by the Act to be made and may contain such incidental and supplementary provisions as appear to the Governor General to be necessary or expedient for the purposes of the regulation. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020 empowers the competent authority to make such orders, and whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 2 order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 23rd day of March 2020. And whereas Section 5(1) of the Act provides that all emergency regulations, if not sooner revoked, shall cease to have effect when the proclamation of emergency in pursuance of which they have been made ceases to have effect. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the first resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020 and Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 2 Order 2020. And whereas, pursuant to the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020, the competent authority made the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020 on the 30th day of March 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the second resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020, Emergency Powers COVID-19 number 2 Order 2020, and Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas, pursuant to Section 5(2) of the Act, by the third resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020, Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 2 Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 3 Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 8th day of May 2020 and revoked the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 2 Order. And whereas pursuant to Section 5.2 of the Act, by the fourth resolution, each House of Parliament affirmed the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 3 Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 4 Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 29th day of May 2020 and revoked the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 3 Order. And whereas the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 5 Order 2020 was made by the competent authority on the 24th day of June 2020 and revoked the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 4 Order. And whereas the existence of a state of public emergency in the Bahamas as a result of the presence and effect of COVID-19 in the Bahamas continues. And whereas it continues to be necessary and expedient for securing the public safety, the defense of the Bahamas, the maintenance of public order, the suppression of mutiny, rebellion, and riot, and for maintaining supplies and services essential to the life and well-being of the community, to continue and for the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020, the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 5 Order 2020, and the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that this House A. approve the continuance of proclamation made on the 17th day of March 2020 until the 31st day of July 2020. B. affirms the continuance in effect of Emergency Powers COVID-19 Regulations 2020 made on the 17th day of March 2020 until the 31st day of July 2020. C. affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Special Provisions Order 2020 made on the 30th day of March 2020 until the 31st day of July 2020, and affirms the continuance in effect of the Emergency Powers COVID-19 Number 5 Order 2020 made on the 24th day of June 2020 until the 31st day of July 2020.
Order that the notice be brought up. Order that the notice to lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings. The chair recognizes the honorable member for East Grand Bahama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg please to introduce a resolution approving the guarantee by the government the fulfillment of the bank's of the Bahamas Development Bank's obligation under a $37 million 20-year loan with the National Insurance Board at an interest rate of 3.94%. Whereas the Bahamas Development Bank, hereinafter called the bank, a body corporate established under the provisions of the Bahamas Development Bank Act, Chapter 357, Statute Laws of the Bahamas, 2000, is vested with the following functions. A, to promote industrial, agricultural, and commercial development in the Bahamas through the financing of or the investing in approved enterprises. B, to encourage the participation in approved enterprises by citizens of the Bahamas. And C, generally to promote and enhance the economic development of the Bahamas. And whereas on 17th February 2000, the bank was desirous of raising $25 million by way of an issue of bonds in Series A and B in units of 100,000, redeemable over the period and subject to the variable rates of interest as follows. Series and amounts of bonds: A, 15-year at prime interest rate for 20 years. and B10, 1% below prime at 15 years. And whereas on 29th June 2005, the bank was desirous of raising $25 million by way of an issue of bonds in Series C and D in units of 100,000, redeemable over the period and subject to the variable rates of interest as follows. C, prime rate for 20 years. D, 1% below prime at 15 years. The Series A, Series B, Series C, and Series D bonds hereafter collectively called the bonds, and whereas the government was desirous of guaranteeing the redemption and payment of interest as and when due under the bonds, and whereas on 17 February 2000, the House of Assembly approved the guarantee by the government of the fulfillment by the bank of its obligations pertaining to the redemption of and payment of interest under the Series A and Series B bonds, and whereas on 29th June 2005, the House of Assembly approved the guarantee by the government of the fulfillment by the bank of its obligations pertaining to the redemption of and payment of interest under Series C and Series D bonds, and whereas the bank is desirous of converting the remaining bonds totaling $37 million to a 20-year loan with the National Insurance Board at an interest rate of 3.94%, the loan, and whereas the bank is desirous that the government guarantees the fulfillment by the bank of its obligations under the loan that shall be serviced through the government's subvention to the bank, and whereas by Section 18 of the Financial Administration and Audit Act 2010, it is provided that no guarantee involving a financial liability shall be binding upon the government unless entered into with the prior approval of the House of Assembly signified by resolution thereof. Be it therefore resolved that this House approves the guarantee by the government of the fulfillment of the bank's obligation under a $37 million 20-year loan with the National Insurance Board at an interest rate of 3.94%. For the absence of doubt, Mr. Speaker, this is a conversion of a bond to a loan to free up capital in the bank.
Order that the notice be brought up.
Pardon me?
Order that the notice do lie on the table. Further notices for future meetings.
They have bonds. So cash reserve has a bond.
Further notices for future meetings. Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Angleston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The opposition would wish to renew all notices in its name.
Adjournment. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for Bamboo Town.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to renew all matters in the name of the government and to move that the House adjourns until tomorrow, 3 p.m., Tuesday, the 30th of June, 2020.
Honourable members, it's been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 3 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, the 30th of June, 2020. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. Final adjournment.
Mr. Speaker, I do now move that the House adjourns.
Honourable members, it has been moved and seconded that the House adjourns to 3 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, the 30th of June. As many are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The House stands adjourned to 3 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, the 30th of June, 2020.